Hello, and welcome to the Warfighter Wire, your weekly update on all the news across the Department of Defense. I am your host, and we have a very busy week to break down for you. For the week of August 17th to the 23rd, the DoD's activities painted a picture of a force in dynamic transition. We saw a clear dual focus, balancing the long-term, high-stakes competition with near peers against the immediate and persistent needs of regional stability and homeland security. There were major shifts in U.S. force posture in the Middle East, the validation of a new warfighting concept in the Pacific, massive investments in next-generation technologies like artificial intelligence and quantum navigation, and a renewed focus on the well-being of the force as a foundational component of readiness. Let's dive right into the major headlines. The biggest strategic news this week involves a significant and calculated reposturing of U.S. forces in the Middle East. On August 17th, an advisor to Iraqi Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani announced that U.S. forces are scheduled to withdraw from two key installations, Ain al-Assad Airbase and Baghdad International Airport, with the withdrawal slated for September 2025. This is a concrete step in a process agreed upon by the U.S. and Iraq in September of 2024, which outlined a phased withdrawal with remaining forces anticipated to be out by the end of 2026. A U.S. Embassy spokesperson in Baghdad elaborated, stating the mission will evolve from a coalition-based framework to a more traditional bilateral security partnership. The move addresses a persistent demand from Iranian-backed militias in Iraq, which have repeatedly threatened attacks if a withdrawal timeline wasn't set. By reducing this large, fixed footprint, the DoD mitigates a major political friction point, reduces the vulnerability of its personnel, and frees up critical resources like active duty combat brigades and ISR assets for a strategic pivot to the Indo-Pacific theater. While drawing down in Iraq, the U.S. is deepening ties elsewhere. On August 21st, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia was formally welcomed into the Department of Defense National Guard Bureau States Partnership Program. Christopher Momoe, a Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense, emphasized the program's critical role in developing long-term partnerships essential to U.S. national security. This creates a durable framework for enhancing military interoperability outside of traditional arms sales. Meanwhile, in Europe, commentary on the Russia-Ukraine conflict hinted at a potential paradigm shift. During a broadcast of Face the Nation on August 17th, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said that any meaningful peace agreement would require concessions from both sides, stating that a one-sided deal would be tantamount to a surrender. This follows reports from a recent summit between the U.S. and Russian presidents, where, according to former Ambassador William Taylor and administration officials, an agreement was reached in principle for the U.S. and European nations to provide Ukraine with Article 5-like security guarantees. Such a guarantee, while stopping short of full NATO membership, could provide the security assurances necessary for Ukraine to engage in a ceasefire, confident it wouldn't be vulnerable to a renewed invasion. On the home front, the focus on homeland security was sharp. It was reported that more than 700 additional National Guard members from West Virginia, South Carolina, and Ohio were being deployed to Washington, D.C. to support the D.C. Safe and Beautiful Task Force. The nature of this mission suggests a requirement that exceeds the capacity of the D.C. National Guard alone. The mission's political significance was underscored on August 20th, when Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, accompanied by White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller, personally visited the troops stationed at Union Station. This sustained military presence for a domestic public safety mission could establish new precedents for the use of military assets in support of civil authorities. Finally, the Defense Industrial Base saw billions in contracts awarded. The Defense Threat Reduction Agency awarded a landmark 10-year multiple award contract with a combined ceiling of $3.5 billion to 6 companies: Amentum, Vertex Aerospace, Jacobs, Fluor, Black & Veatch, and Parsons. They will support the Cooperative Threat Reduction Program, helping partner nations secure chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear materials. Additionally, Pratt & Whitney and Raytheon Company received a contract worth up to nearly $2.88 billion for 141 F-135 propulsion systems for the F-35 aircraft, supporting all U.S. services, international partners, and foreign military sales customers. Now, let's shift our focus to the services, starting with the U.S. Air Force and its landmark exercise in the Pacific. The U.S. Air Force just concluded its inaugural month-long Department-Level Exercise Series, or DLE, across the Indo-Pacific. This was a massive undertaking, described as the service's largest and most complex exercise in a generation, involving an unprecedented surge of more than 12,000 Air Force and Space Force personnel and over 350 aircraft. The entire point of this massive event was to test and validate the Air Force's new warfighting concept, Agile Combat Employment, or ACE. This represents a fundamental strategic shift away from large, centralized, and vulnerable airbases that have been the norm for decades. ACE focuses on using smaller, more dispersed teams that can operate from a network of austere and remote locations, complicating an adversary's targeting calculus and countering the anti-access/area denial strategies of competitors like China. The successful conclusion of the DLE is the capstone validation of this new, more agile and unprecedented way of fighting. Directly tied to the new operational model, it was announced on August 20th that the 12th Air Task Force achieved its final certification after successfully completing exercise Bamboo Eagle 25-3. This makes it one of the first units certified under the Air Force's new deployment model, which creates mission-tailored, scalable force packages instead of standardized one-size-fits-all units. On the modernization front, there was big news from the Florida Air National Guard. On August 21st, the 125th Fighter Wing in Jacksonville received its first permanently assigned F-35A Lightning II aircraft. The arrival of this fifth-generation fighter makes a significant leap in capability for the unit. The Air Force also awarded key contracts for future capabilities. Trust Automation Incorporated was awarded an indefinite delivery/indefinite quantity contract with a ceiling of $490 million for the rapid research, development, prototyping, and transition of unmanned aircraft systems and counter-UAS technologies. And General Dynamics Information Technology received a $40.4 million contract for bioeffects research related to direct energy, critical work for understanding the safety and operational parameters of future directing energy weapons. Turning our eyes to the heavens, the U.S. Space Force executed a mission of the highest national importance this week, launching one of its most advanced and secretive assets into orbit. On August 27th, a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket successfully launched the 8th mission of the X-37B orbital test vehicle for Launch Complex 39A at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. The mission, designated USSF-36, is operated by the 5th Space Operations Squadron, part of Space Delta 9, in conjunction with the Air Force Rapid Capabilities Office. The Falcon 9 booster also successfully landed at Cape Canaveral following the launch. While most of its mission is classified, the Space Force highlighted 2 groundbreaking experiments being conducted, both aimed at ensuring U.S. capabilities in contested space environments. First, the X-37B will conduct demonstrations of high-bandwidth inter-satellite laser communications, interacting with commercial satellite networks in low Earth orbit to test a more secure, higher-capacity method of data transportation. Second, the spaceplane is testing what the Space Force calls the world's highest-performing quantum internal sensor ever used in space. This revolutionary technology enables unaided navigation by precisely observing the rotation and acceleration of atoms, providing a crucial alternative to GPS, which is vulnerable to jamming or attack in a conflict. While this tip-of-the-spear technology was launching, the Space Force was also continuing the vital work of building its organization. On August 20th, Space Force Systems Command announced the official activation of its new Systems Delta 85, which took place in a ceremony on August 8th at Peterson Space Force Base. This unit is specifically designed to streamline the notoriously slow defense acquisition process by more closely aligning the people who buy space systems with the operators who use them. It will focus on integrated capabilities for space domain awareness, missile warning and tracking, battle management, and space intelligence. Finally, the commander of U.S. Space Command, General Stephen Whiting, delivered a keynote address at the South American Defense Conference in Argentina, urging for greater international cooperation to safeguard the space domain and counter efforts by Russia and China to expand their influence. The U.S. Army's activities this week illustrate a service in the middle of a profound transformation, executing a clear, 2-track strategy, divesting from legacy systems to reinvest aggressively into technologies of the future. A prime example of this comes from the Oregon Army National Guard. The 3rd Battalion, 116th Cavalry Regiment conducted its final live-fire tank gunnery exercise, marking the end of its decades-long heritage as an armored unit. The battalion is transitioning to an infantry formation as part of the Army's Transformation and Contact initiative, reflecting a strategic shift away from heavy armor toward more mobile and expeditionary forces. In a related move, the Oregon Guard also broke ground on a new $300 million, 20,000 square foot readiness center in Hillsboro, specifically designed with pass-through bay doors to house and protect M777 howitzers. So where are those resources going? Overwhelmingly into artificial intelligence and machine learning. In a single week, the Army awarded nearly $250 million in contracts dedicated to building an AI-driven military. This includes, first, a $487 million contract to Metron Incorporated on August 18th for AI and machine learning research for reconnaissance. Second, a contract worth up to $99.5 million to Scale AI Incorporated on August 21st to create the high-quality annotated dataset essential for training advanced AI systems. Thirdly, a contract with a ceiling of $98.9 million to Turbine One LLC on August 22nd to provide automated target recognition at the tactical edge, helping soldiers identify threats faster. This represents a complete technology stack: foundational research, data curation, and tactical application. This investment is backed by a robust innovation pipeline. The Army Research Laboratory highlighted several recently patented technologies now available for licensing, including an advanced 3D laser forming technique that can rapidly fabricate complex metal parts without mechanical dies, energy-saving software that allows soldiers to swap running processes to conserve battery life, and a new method for creating bio-threat sensors that are fast, cheap, and don't require cold storage. Of course, the Army National Guard also remains heavily engaged in domestic operations. A Montana Guard HH-60M Blackhawk medevac crew successfully rescued 3 hikers from the Abruska Beartooth Wilderness, and in Oregon, the 229th of Aviation Battalion conducted an intensive flight training, practicing complex logistics for forward arming and refueling point procedures. The U.S. Navy's immense global mission was on full display this week, with capital ships projecting power while other assets conducted vital humanitarian and security missions. In European waters, the USS Gerald R. Ford Carrier Strike Group, which includes Carrier Air Wing 8 and the destroyer USS Winston S. Churchill, entered the North Sea, a clear signal of the U.S. commitment to NATO's northern flank. Meanwhile, in the Pacific, the USS George Washington Carrier Strike Group with Carrier Air Wing 5, the cruiser USS Robert Smalls, and the destroyer USS Shoup pulled into Guam for a scheduled port visit, reinforcing U.S. military posture in the region. The high operational tempo was also evident as the amphibious assault ship USS Iwo Jima departed Norfolk for deployment, while the USS carrier Harry S. Truman returned home to Norfolk. The week also marked the successful conclusion of the Continuing Promise 2025 deployment, as the hospital ship USNS Comfort returned to Norfolk on August 17th. From June to August, the Comfort visited Costa Rica, the Dominican Republic, Ecuador, Grenada, Panama, and Trinidad and Tobago. During the mission, military medical teams provided patient care and conducted surgeries, while U.S. Navy Seabees assisted the community with engineering projects. This mission is a cornerstone of U.S. soft power engagement. On the training front, Exercise Northern Edge 2025 commenced in and around Alaska. This is a major joint exercise testing interoperability in the demanding Arctic environment, involving over 6,400 service members, 100 aircraft, and 7 U.S. and Canadian naval vessels. The Navy also continues its vital counter-narcotics work. A U.S. Coast Guard Law Enforcement Detachment, or LADET, embarked on the Arleigh-Burke-class destroyer USS Sampson, successfully interdicted a drug smuggling vessel in the Eastern Pacific, seizing approximately 1,296 pounds of cocaine. These simultaneous missions highlight the tremendous premium on available platforms and the diverse skills of Navy sailors. The U.S. Marine Corps was engaged on 2 very different but equally vital fronts this week, reinforcing its iconic public image while simultaneously investing in the high-tech intellectual capital needed for future battlefields. From August 20th to the 25th, the Corps is hosting Marine Week Boston as part of its ongoing 250th anniversary celebration. The event is a full-scale public outreach campaign with events like early morning workout with the Marines sessions on the Boston Common, solemn wreath-laying ceremonies at the Soldier and Sailors Monument, and daily performances by the renowned Silent Drill Platoon and the Quantico Marine Band. This is a major investment in reinforcing the Marine Corps' brand, supporting and recruiting and honoring the service's rich legacy. At the same time, in a much quieter setting, the Corps was preparing for a very different kind of future. A press release detailed the launch of the inaugural U.S. Marine Corps Naval Postgraduate School Artificial Intelligence Fellowship, which took place from August 11th to the 14th in Monterey, California. This intensive program is a direct investment in developing a cadre of officers with deep technical expertise in AI, a capability identified as essential for the success of the Corps' Force Design 2030 modernization effort. These two events perfectly capture the Corps' modern challenge. It must preserve its unique warrior culture to attract the right talent, while rapidly building the technical proficiency needed to win on a 21st century battlefield. Finally this week, the Department of Defense launched two key initiatives aimed squarely at bolstering the well-being of service members and their families, recognizing the readiness starts at home. First, the DoD officially launched the Fueling the Fight Military Leaders Nutrition Readiness Toolkit. Available as an online resource through Military OneSource, this toolkit was developed with input from nutrition professionals and military family service providers. It's designed to help leaders address food insecurity and promote healthy eating, particularly for junior enlisted members and single-earner households. The department is explicitly framing nutrition readiness as essential to enhance warfighter lethality and family well-being. Alongside this, the DoD highlighted its ongoing efforts to expand child care availability for military families, another top departmental priority. The Child Care Expansion Initiative involves partnering with nonprofits to open new facilities in high-demand areas. A prime example is a new facility opened in June 2025 in Norfolk, Virginia area, operated by the Armed Services YMCA, with plans for additional centers in Virginia Beach and Northern Virginia. The Pentagon is institutionally recognizing that issues like food security and the lack of childcare are direct threats to the lethality, retention, and overall health of an all-volunteer workforce. And that's all the time we have for this week of Warfighter Wire. From strategic realignment in the Middle East and the validation of a new warfighting doctrine in the Pacific, to the launch of quantum navigation systems and deep investment in artificial intelligence, it's clear the Department of Defense is accelerating its transformation. These moves, combined with a foundational focus on personnel and family readiness, signal a force preparing to meet the complex challenges of the future. Thank you for joining us. We will see you next week.